Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic this week in WordPress and SaaS. We've got another great guest. We're going to be talking about all things about how learners look at modern WordPress, about how Gutenberg has affected this. It's going to be a great show. We've got a great expert guest that's trained hundreds, maybe thousands of new people to WordPress. She should know what the situation is for new people coming into the WordPress ecosystem. We've got Christina Hills with us. So Christina, would you like to give us a quick intro to the tribe?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Hills, and I have been teaching non-techie entrepreneurs since 2008 how to build their websites with WordPress.
Yeah, I thought Christina was the person to ask about this, because obviously we are mostly WordPress professionals that listen to this show. So I thought she would have a great insight into that. And I've got my great co-host, Andrew. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself to the tribe?
Of course. Hello there. It's Andrew Palmer from Bertha.ai, helping people write better content quicker.
Great. Before we go into this great interview, we've got a couple of messages from our major sponsors. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. Just want to point out that some of our sponsors and also got some great recommendation of plugins and WordPress services that I highly recommend and use on a daily basis. If you want to get all those goodies, all you have to do is go over to WP-Tonic/recommendations, WP-Tonic/recommendations, and they're all listed out on that particular page. So, Christina, let's go straight into it. So, can you give us a quick outline how you got? I know you were in films. You actually helped out on one of my favorite films, Judge Dredd, the second version, not the Hollywood one. The second version is a much better film, probably because you helped out on it. That's a fabulous film. So you're in, cinema, the world of Hollywood, and then you got into the crazy world of WordPress. How did that happen?
How did that happen? Yeah. Well, I'd been working for George Lucas's company, Industrial Light and Magic, and they are at what everybody knows George Lucas. And the most famous film I worked on at that company was Star Wars Episode 1. Not the one that came out in the 70s, the first of the series that came out in the 90s. And it was a fabulous career. So my job was taking the live action characters, the live action film footage, and mixing in the computer animated characters in there. So I worked on Jar Jar Binks and many of the other characters in Star Wars. And I also worked on Jurassic Park, The Lost World, so Jurassic Park 2. And that was a lot of fun. But the film industry is not good for having a family. And I had a child and I wanted to be home and work from home. And so I quit my job and I started becoming an online entrepreneur. And I first started out as the shopping cart queen, and I helped people integrate their shopping carts into their website.
Oh, I love the title.
Yeah.
There's a few people that call me a queen.
So, but anyway, what happened, and this is what's interesting about the entrepreneurial life, is you discover what your clients need. And the biggest need was the website part. So I was doing the shopping cart setup, and then I'd say, okay, here are your links, just add them to your website. And they didn't know. Yeah, right. They didn't know how to manage their websites.
Get that blank look.
Yeah, right. So this was back in 2008 when WordPress had started out as a blogging platform and then was turning into a CRM. And I realized, hey, I can teach them WordPress because that's independent from a computer. Do you guys remember the old Dreamweaver days? And you'd have
Still use it.
Dreamweaver on your computer, and then you'd upload to the cloud. Whereas WordPress,
Christina, I'm so old that I I was using Direct Macromedia Director. That shows how old I am, Christina.
Yeah. Those were the days, right? But
You
with
were the days.
WordPress, you can be on your desktop, you can be on your laptop, you can be on a tablet, you can be on a phone. It's totally independent. Whereas with the old days, it was tied to your web designer's computer. It was really hard for the business owner to interact. So I specialize in teaching business owners WordPress. I don't teach people to become web designers, although some of my business owners go on and start building sites for other people. But the flexibility of WordPress, and especially you can change your designs, your theme designs, because in the old days, someone would build you a site on Dreamweaver and then you'd say, I want to redesign, and it would be a whole new website, basically.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fantastic. Well, at least you didn't say, before I throw it over to Andrew, at least you didn't say that you built sites in front page. I'm not sure if I could forgive you if you had said that. That's a bridge too far, but Dreamweaver, we all been there. So over to you, Andrew.
Well, I think you're a very brave person. And Carl Urban, was he good to work with, or did you get to meet these guys? Because he's in The Boys now on Amazon and everything. I love the Judge Dredd film where he's the best Judge Dredd ever, frankly. And I need another one, so give us a tip. But
well, Judge Dredd was actually my first film I ever worked on, and that was before I was at George Lucas's company. I worked on Judge Dredd. Before that, I had been doing television commercials, and I discovered I liked film special effects better.
It's amazing. So you were using quantum graphics and all that kind of stuff, and real heavy software stuff, and it's amazing. So coming from that, really so this question is relevant. That's why I needed to do that lead in. Coming from the very complex, almost programmatic way that you have to work with film and merging it with CGI and all that kind of stuff. With your experiences connected to training loads of individuals for WordPress, how did your brain handle the going from the complex to the actually not quite so complex, but also teaching people that are almost unteachable because they're trying to run their business, they're trying to make cash flow, they're trying to employ people and all that kind of stuff. So have you got the patience of a saint, or what problems did you come across that you thought, oh my God, I've made a mistake here? Basically.
That's a great tagline. I teach the unteachable, because that's pretty much what I do. So the big shift came with I couldn't do special effects from home.
Right.
So that was it. It's like I wanted to work from home so that I could be there for my daughter. And when you are in the film industry, it's 10, 12-hour days, 5-6 days a week away from home, and it's not conducive to having a family. So that was okay. I have to make this shift.
Yeah. Can I just jump in? So I just want to, because I think the listeners really need your perspective here. You've trained loads of people in WordPress. What are some of the biggest challenges even now? I know WordPress has morphed a bit. We're going to discuss that during the show. But what are still some of the biggest challenges that you deal on a consistent basis that you've seen a pattern when it comes to bringing new people to WordPress?
People have a hard time understanding the concept of widgets, WordPress widgets. It's a really hard for their brains to grasp that. They understand a page, they understand a blog post, they understand a menu, they understand uploading images. But when I teach the whole widgets on the sidebar, but the sidebars can be at the top, or they can be in the footer, or they can be on the side, business owners have a hard time with that. And I think it's because WordPress calls them widgets, right? And that sounds so techy. Yeah. So I explain widgets more like it's a bookshelf, and you've got different shelves on a bookshelf, and you put different things on a different shelf in the bookshelf. And you could put it up here, you could put it down there. And so I come up with simple ways to explain complex things. And I also use a lot of pictures when I teach. And part of that came from when I first came online. I'd listen to lectures and people would talk about all this internet stuff and they didn't use pictures, and it made it really difficult. So I do a lot of my training is webinars with slides and PowerPoint. But I think widgets is one of the things they have a hard time getting. And they also have, now remember, I'm teaching the unteachable. So people are probably listening and they're like, wow, this isn't that hard. But business owners are very busy. They're not technical, but they want to be in control of their site. And they just have to be patient, learning some of these basic concepts where many of them, they didn't learn in school, right?
Sure.
So kids now, like my daughter, can figure stuff out. And I said, how did you figure that out? She's like, I don't know. I just kept clicking till it worked. Right.
Well, that's
But
great.
the older generation, they don't get that concept of just keep banging around until something works.
That's
Partly
fine.
because they're afraid of breaking stuff. But yeah, carry on, John. Sorry.
No, it's over to you. Over to you, Andrew.
Well, it's basically, so what on that, we've had a sea change in WordPress, or we're heading towards a sea change. So what are your thoughts connected to Gutenberg, and has it made the general situation better or more difficult for new users to WordPress and basically to learn how to use the platform? Because talking about widgets have changed, right?
Right.
Only a slightly big question, Christine.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's it.
Slightly
Yeah.
big question. Okay. I hate to say this publicly, but I really hate Gutenberg. I hate the block editor. And at this point, at the time of this recording, I refuse to use it and I refuse to teach it. I think they totally missed the mark with Gutenberg. And I'm just, should I call it the block editor? Do you care?
Yeah, block editor. Yeah, because
Okay.
it's
Block editor, Gutenberg. Gutenberg is the internal term. The public term is the block editor.
Sure.
I think they really missed the mark. And I hate to criticize them, but I think they did. Now, they'll probably recover at some point, but it's been a few years now. And the proof of this is how much Elementor, the Elementor editor, and how much Divi has totally taken off.
Sure.
So with Elementor, you don't need the block editor. With Divi, you don't need the block editor. And I continue to teach the classic editor and classic widgets. So that is the approach I'm taking until they make it more intuitive. So when I go into the block editor, it's not intuitive. I don't know what to do. It's just not clear. Now, so I'm just waiting until I feel that it's at the level that real beginners can work with. So that's
so
been my approach.
Supplementary to that, and this isn't there's another question, but it's kind of, so what are your opinions connected to Gutenberg? We've heard that, but basically, do you think as a teacher of people that are unteachable, that Gutenberg is aimed more at developers than the general public?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So that's actually a good opinion to have, because you're out there teaching literally hundreds of people.
Well, that's why I thought Christina would be a great guest, Andrew.
Great opinion to have, because you're basically on the coalface. You're teaching people how to use WordPress, and the block editor isn't covering your needs or your clients' needs at this moment. And I've always felt that, and I'm going to be opinionated here, I've always felt that the noisy people within WordPress are the developers, and they love Gutenberg because it's a development and it's progress and everything. I like Gutenberg. I don't mind working in Gutenberg at all, but I absolutely get your opinion. I think that WordPress et al. And all other companies, Divi, Elementor, everybody should actually listen to people like you to, say, Christina, what do you think? And move forward.
Well, if they're going to go after the Wix and the Squarespace market, right? Because if they're going to go after the beginner's market, they need to have something that's easy to use.
I get it.
But they're a bunch of developers. So
Well, I think you've just. I like to
Yeah.
actually continue this for most of this first half because I think it's a really important question. So I'm agnostic when it comes to Gutenberg. I think that would surprise a lot of people because I've also, through the Friday show, been a bit negative, but not about the end objective, just how it's been done. So what I think you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, and is that I think you're saying that that's a fundamental UX problem here, and it was linked to those that were the leads of the project being very developer focused and not really having the experience and knowledge of UX usability experts. Would that, I'm putting words in your mouth, but is that the gist of some of your feelings?
Yes, I think it got released too soon. I think it got released to the public too soon. But software companies always do that.
Sure.
And it was developer focused. It was not user focused. To me, good software is you go in and you know what to do. A perfect example is Gravity Forms. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gravity Forms.
Completely. Yeah.
It's a premium plugin for WordPress to build forms. It is so intuitive, I never read the manual because I just go in and the UI, I kind of know what to do. I know
Yeah.
where to click. I know what to do. There's little bubbles that explain things. So that's an example of great software is when you don't have to read the manual. When I first, now I forget do you guys remember which year the block editor came out? It was before the pandemic.
It was
It
4 years
was.
ago. 4 years ago.
4 years
Wow.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went in there and I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, this is not very good. And then it was really buggy and they kept changing things. So I thought, okay, I know how software development goes. I'll wait until they settle down a bit, right? Because I don't want to memorize something, teach it, and then have to undo that. Oh, no, wait, it moved over here. But every few months, I sort of check back in with Gutenberg and I go, nah, I'm still not. I'm still
So,
not getting it.
so a follow up. It was the next question, but I think we can combine them and also get Andrew's input, and then we go for the break. The next question was, the next step, which is full site editing in Gutenberg, because of what you've just said, and I don't want to bias you. What's your feelings about, this is Gutenberg on steroids, isn't it? Full site editing. How do you think that's going to work out and go down?
Well, for my community, which are non-techie business owners who just want to be able to manage their site without a lot of fanfare, full site editing for them would be too much. They kind of need a structure and a parameter so that they can stick within certain confines. And so the full site editing is sort of beyond what I believe that my students need. Remember, my students are like the life coach who wants to get their website up and be able to add things to their site, change headlines, do blog posts. They're not wanting to really design everything because they're not designers. So that's why I like Divi, for example. I don't know if you guys ever talk about Divi.
Well, we've got the king of Divi with us, Christina,
I used
Andrew
to run,
Oh,
just to
Barlow.
apologies.
let you know, I used to run a little marketplace called elegantmarketplace.com, which sold exclusively Divi products and
Oh, cool.
plugins and things like that. So
Apologies for me not knowing that ahead of time.
don't worry, I'm all in. I'm all in on Divi.
Yeah. Well,
having said
Divi
that,
gives
person
you
got-
designs.
yeah,
You can pick the florist design and you don't
sure.
have to be a florist and you can just take all of their pages, put your own stuff in. And so for my community, full site editing doesn't really apply. But
No,
here's what's great about WordPress. Let me make one more
Yeah.
point.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
WordPress is so big and so vast, it services all these different markets. And I've picked one small slice of the market, and there's many, many, many other markets.
Yeah, and it's great to niche down to that as well, and also from your perspective of a programmer, because that's what let's say that's what you were when you were doing film editing and putting in CGIs into live action, all that kind of stuff. Divi is very intuitive. Even when you probably started off with Divi in its infancy, when it was a block editor, basically, you used it in the back end, and now it's got the full site editing capabilities there. But WordPress has currently, in my view, it has an identity crisis. What is it? Is it a CMS? Is it a web building thing? We've got Code Canyon that sells themes. We've got Elegant Marketplace, which I sold. They sell themes and plugins for Divi. You've got all the Elementor stuff like Crocker blocks and Cadence themes, and you've got Cadence blocks, which is for Gutenberg. So the third party industry have actually grabbed hold of Gutenberg with Cadence blocks and other blocks. I've got a little block that I sell on another website that I've got. And so we've had to, as developers and website people, we've had to amend our ways along with WordPress. We've had to try and grow. And the article that Yoast did the other day, Yoast de Volk, who used to own Yoast, and it is now owned by a hosting company, said that WordPress had just lost 0.3% of its share this month over the last.
I saw that article.
And that's nothing to be afraid of, because competition is competition. Elementor, with their cloud process, they're becoming more of a Wix offering, if you like. You put in Elementor, you've got your hosting already there, you've got all your pages. Elementor were one of the first to put in their layouts and give you starter kits, if you like. And I think WordPress will grow. We've got the pattern situation now on make.wordpress and everything. You can import patterns into Gutenberg, so you can almost build a website just by copying. The point that I'm trying to make, Jonathan, it's going to last 2 seconds, is that WordPress needs to grow, because the third party suppliers of WordPress products are growing exponentially.
That's great. We're going to go for our break. We'll be back. I really enjoyed the conversation so far. Hopefully you have, Tribe. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. I just want to point out, I do a fantastic newsletter. It's based on the key stories that we discuss on the Friday show. Plus, I write a personal editorial where I have a go at almost everybody that leadership in WordPress. It's made me a leopard of the WordPress community, but somebody has to speak truth to power, don't they? And that's my job, I feel. If you want to read this rag, all you have to do is go over to WP-Tonic/newsletter, WP-Tonic newsletter, sign up and see how I dig my grave every week in my newsletter. So, at least I'm honest about it. But all my faults, which Andrew could every show, I peeve him off because I have to read him in. On to the next. So, let's be honest here, Christina. This is a deep question. You're the queen of DIY business, helping them. Can you touch your heart and say that they should still utilize WordPress, or should they go to the dark force of Wix and Squarespace? And if you still, putting your hand on your heart, Christina, can say that business owners should still utilize WordPress instead of the dark forces, why is that, Christina?
The thing about the answer is yes, they should stay with WordPress, because WordPress does give you these various tools. If you go over to Wix or Squarespace, you're going to hit a point where you've maxed out. Whereas with WordPress, you don't max out. You can go from a one-man band solo entrepreneur to a Fortune 500 company with WordPress. You're not going to be able to do that with Wix or Squarespace. None of my colleagues, none of the experts in our industry are using Wix or Squarespace. Okay, so maybe a restaurant is. But with those platforms, you're gonna hit a ceiling. Whereas with WordPress, you can get to the point where your business grows so much that now you've gone from DIY to I'm hiring out. So there's nothing wrong with hiring developers at all, and there's nothing wrong with hiring designers, but you have to be at a certain, your business has to be at a certain level. Your income has to be at the level where you can afford to pay that. And so I help the small solo entrepreneurs who are maybe just starting an online business or starting their own business. Maybe they quit their corporate job. So WordPress gives you that expandability to you can grow as big as you want to, or you can have you can just stay a life coach or whatever you do, consultant forever, and have a simple website where people can do e-commerce, they can sign up for your newsletter. There's a lot you can do. So I like that flexibility. And I teach people, when you look online, you're going to find a lot of different articles about WordPress, and many of them don't apply to you. So just don't read that. If you run across something that talks about code, it's not designed for you. So that's why I am still thumbs up with WordPress.
Well, over to you, Andrew.
Well, I do agree with you totally. There's many reasons to use WordPress. One, you own the website. You can move hosting whenever you like, pretty much. There's hundreds of thousands of options out there for hosting. But with Wix and, Wix, I think Hilton Hotels uses Wix. That's quite a big thing. CBS uses Wix. So they're unusual case studies. But so they've invested in that platform because that's maybe where they started. They thought, let's use Wix. And I know that there's a band in the UK that's quite big, and they use Bros. They're called the 80s band, a couple of twins, and they built their website on Wix, and they've just kept it on Wix. But so from that perspective, I get it. But really, WordPress is the reason that I would stick with WordPress is because WordPress is so flexible. You can build anything. You can build a web app. You can have, all the PHP on it that you like. You've got so many plugins and extensions. You can have a yoga booking system. You can have a hairdressing system. You can have, local businesses will survive on WordPress. What I like about your attitude is that you're teaching. I love that, teaching the unteachable. You're teaching business owners to run their own websites. And there's not enough people like you in the world, frankly, because I couldn't do it. Every time even when I'm trying to teach a client to use Divi, which I use exclusively, by the way, pretty much. Bertha AI is built on Elementor, but that was out of my hands. But even when I'm trying to teach them to get round Divi, I get frustrated because I'm thinking, why can't you use a mouse? It's just incredible. It's just, you click left, not right. It's just, all this kind of stuff. So I believe that WordPress is the de facto website building tool for every single business out there, every type of business, from flower seller to a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So, Christina, I write out the questions because I used to combine 3 questions in one question, and I used to ramble constantly. To keep me under control, I write the questions out now because I never gave any time to my guests to actually answer a question. Because how could they? Because my questions were four questions in one. But I'm going to do it again, Chris. But it's only 2. What I think we got another 5 minutes before we finish off with the podcast part of the show and we go into bonus content. Is that to encapsulate? I think, and I just want to get your input on this, Christina. Is that one of the fundamental problems is Gutenberg and the UX design. The other thing which Andrew and yourself sees as the great strength that you can build out if you base your web platform on WordPress, you can move it to another hosting provider, you can find another design help out there, and you can build your business out. But isn't that a duality though, And the duality is everything you and Andrew have said is correct. But the opposite of it is that there is too much choice. There, you know, that as a business owner with WordPress, you can go on a bender, as I call it. You can go plug in potty. You can go theme potty. You can go, utilizing an English term, you can go native, which is very racist, and I apologize, but I'm using it, that you can go absolutely bonkers and waste a lot of time where you should be concentrating on your business. What's your response to what I've just said, Christina?
Well, that's pretty much true about life, right? You can go bonkers because there's so much you can do now with the internet. You can go bonkers learning all kinds of things when you should be focusing on your business. But I totally get that, Jonathan. And that's why with my students, I try to keep them very narrow. And so I teach them a little bit and then move on and move on and move on so that they can get to the point where they can do more things. But it's also very important to keep narrow on your focus of what is my objective here. So I hear what you're saying, Jonathan, and there may be some people who say, yeah, I've heard the argument, I'm still going to go with Squarespace. My understanding about Wix, and Andrew, you might know this, is once you pick a design, you can't change to another
Oh, you know, you
design.
can. Yeah, you can change the theme. Yeah,
There,
yeah, yeah.
there's
It's very intuitive these days, and there's Wix Pro as well, Wix Editor X as well, which is amazing. You know, to be honest.
In all honesty, Christina, I think initially it was Flash based. I think I'm not absolutely sure, but am I correct, Andrew, that they've moved away from Flash? It's not Flash based now.
Oh, definitely not. No,
No.
Very,
and that used to be, but it's also they have really invested in a slick UX design, haven't they, Andrew? Do you think it's as good as Squarespace now, Wix?
I think it's on a par with Webflow, and people are going to at me on this, but I really think it's on a par with Webflow. You know, when you look at Wix Editor X, it's amazing, and the intuitiveness of it, the speed of editing, and the speed of the website. You're paying much more money for it. You're not paying your 18 quid a month or whatever, but it's getting there. Plus, you've got all the e-commerce capabilities of it as well, and the booking facilities within it. Got all the widgets that you can put in. You know, to paraphrase you, Christina. So, but I like Christina's perspective on this, because yes, you can go ballistic on it, and I've got clients who say, I want this plugin, I want that plugin, and it's up to us as developers and educators to say, hold your horses, son. This ain't going to work for you. You know, this is why it's not going to work for you. You're going to have tech legacy problems as well, tech debt problems rather. You know, will that how old is that plugin? Is it going to last ages?
Andrew, I think you've touched a really interesting thing there, Andrew, and I think part of it, and I'll be interested in your response, Andrew, and also Christina's, is that this is partly linked, and I'm not having a go at these platforms, listeners, because they do have a place. But I also see it's the rise of the Fiverr and other platforms where you can hire somebody offshore and you're getting it at a low price, and all they're going to do is do what you tell them, and they're going to look for the quickest solution so they can make the most money from a very low bid. The problem is there's nobody that can consult the person that sees the bigger picture. So you end up with, on a weekly basis, we deal with this, Andrew and Christina. We deal with clients that have membership websites that have a host of plugins that are conflicting with themselves, and what I call a spaghetti hot mess of a website, because they've had endless one project developers entered it and they have just put their stack of plugins, and it's a bit of a jumble. Well, how would you respond to that, Christina?
Well, with WordPress, because you can do so much, you might wind up with a jumble of plugins. I always remind my students, know what each plugin does. And one of the things that frustrates me about the WordPress community is you go to wordpress.org and you look up a plugin and it's horribly outdated, and they should be removing things out of the directory, the repository. But piggybacking on what you guys have been saying, if you're using WordPress, there are thousands of people you can hire because thousands of people know WordPress. So you can find, virtual assistants or coders or designers. It's such a huge community, whereas Wix and Squarespace is going to be a smaller community.
I think
And more
that's,
expensive.
yeah.
And more
How would you respond to what I said, Andrew?
I agree. I agree with you, Jonathan. There are people out there that build websites that actually don't care. And what happens with us as a website developer, my other website that I build websites in, is I call it guided website build, because it's not just about the website, it's about the business. It's about the business aim. So we become more and more of a business consultant. And, an example of that is when you're doing a menu. I did a guy who I helped with his restaurants. I put £1 on each item that he sold on his menu because he was complaining about not having the budget to do the website. I said, well, this is how you're going to do it. Got three restaurants. It added £100,000 gross profit to his business that year just by adding £1 to each item, rather than losing business, which he thought he would do by upping his prices. And I was reminded of that because there's many Facebook groups for web developers, and we're becoming more and more business consultants, and some of us are unqualified to do that. Frankly, we're just unqualified. So I like to advise our clients that the website is your shop window. You have to maintain it. You have to keep everything up to date. That includes all the plugins, and that includes all the content. So if you're writing a new piece of content, or you have a slight change in one of the products or services that you're offering, that's what we're here for with our maintenance plans and our care plans, is to make sure that you've got someone to call on to actually amend that website for you. What you're doing, Christina, is allowing them or facilitating them to update their website themselves, which is a great thing. So
It's been a great conversation. We're going to wrap up the podcast part of the show now.
We could go on forever.
Well, we are a little bit. We've got bonus content. You can watch the whole interview plus the bonus content by going to the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. And you're feeling generous, please subscribe to the channel, because there's the Friday show, there's this great interview show, plus other videos. It is a great resource. Please go over there. So, Christina, what's the best way for people to learn more about you, your thoughts, and what you're up to?
So I have a couple of URLs. Probably the best one is websitecreationclass.com. That always shows the next class that I have coming up. My blog at websitecreationworkshop.com. If you go there and click on the blog tab, I put blog posts out. And for any web designers or developers listening to this show, you do want to be patient with your business owners, because there's a lot of basics that they just don't know. And they don't know that they don't know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Christina, do you actually help design agencies, designers that maybe want to bring you in to actually train owners? Do you ever do that?
That's a market I'm looking to break into, is to work with agencies who don't want to take the time or don't have the staff that has the patience to help business owners understand the difference between they're logged into their website or they're not logged into their website.
I definitely don't have that time. Andrew will give a guarantee about that. So, Andrew, how do people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You go to Bertha.ai and we've got a 50% offer at the moment connected to WordCamp Europe, because we're all tripping off to WordCamp Europe. But Bertha.ai, and you can get me on @ArniePalmer on Twitter.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. When you listen to this next Thursday, I will be in Portugal as well with Andrew. Andrew,
Oh my God.
I will. I'll probably have COVID, but there we go. I'm looking forward to it so much. We're going to end the show now, folks. Please go over to the YouTube channel to see the whole interview. We'll see you next week with another great guest like Christina. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
So, Christina, I always ask this question at the beginning of the bonus content. I've got to be honest. At the time, I haven't appreciated it. Some of the biggest cock-ups, some of the biggest messes that I've made professionally have been extremely painful, but they're the ones that I've learned the most from as well. Obviously, I'm asking bravery here. If you don't feel that you can do it, I totally understand. But, normally our biggest cock-ups do stay in our mind for years and years and years. Maybe you can share one or two cock-ups that you have learned the most about growing your business and growing as an entrepreneur.
So as a business owner, my biggest mess ups in the beginning were when I was hiring assistants thinking, great, this is going to be my assistant for the next whatever, and not developing procedures. So I would train a new staff member, they'd work for a year or so, and then they're gone. And I had just done one-on-one training with them. And so, obviously, I train business owners who pay me, right, to take my classes, my online classes. But I'm now taking that approach with any outsourcer I hire, knowing I've got to proceduralize this because I don't know how long they're going to last. And so that was a big mistake I made in the beginning, was just one-on-one with no documentation, training somebody. And now with my team, when someone says to me, well, if they have a question, they can just call me. It's like, no, it has to be in the procedure, in the document, any little gotchas. So I've lost money and time by not proceduralizing everything that I do. So that's everything has to be a procedure.
It's a takeaway, isn't it? It's a process. As long as we have processes and everybody's aware of the processes, and sometimes they are unknowns, and until you make that mistake and you think, oh my goodness, I wish I'd had that in my process, and you can add it to your, you can have a knowledge base for your process. What are the biggest issues we faced? And it's generally around miscommunication or a promise that was heard.
Oh, I think we've lost him. Oh, he's back. He's back.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm back. A promise that, so say I've said to somebody, yes, we can do that on an ad hoc basis. They've then sent me in 20 tickets to say, oh, can you do that? That's not ad hoc, is it? It's 20. You've asked me to do it 20 times. So that's not going to carry on. So you drill down what your processes are with your clients as well as the people that are working with you.
Yeah, I think what you've outlined, Christina, because one of my weaknesses, and at least I'm aware of it, but it is really painful to the people, the poor buggers that have to work for me, is that I've got a bit of dyslexia, and I kind of, but the benefit of being a dyslexic individual is that I tend to see the bigger picture a bit than the average person. I tend to see patterns, big patterns, easier than the average person. But there's a duality about that, Christina, is that I expect my poor staff to be mind readers. That I expect them to know what I know, what I clearly understand. And they're not mind readers, and they probably have no idea why I'm asking them to do this, do that, why. And the only way that can be coped, keep me under control, because I'm all over the place, is by writing it down and having internal processes. That's the other benefit, isn't it? Because I do think a lot of business owners do expect their staff to be entrepreneurs, which they're not. That's why they're working for you.
Right.
And
Right.
secondly, a lot of business owners expect their staff to be mind readers, don't they?
Yeah, sometimes things that we think are obvious that somebody can look and just know, it doesn't have to be explained, does have to be explained. And Andrew really nailed it when he talked about communication. And one of the things I try to do with communications, one of the things I try to keep in mind, do you guys have soap operas in the UK like we
We
do in
do,
the
yeah,
States?
we
Well,
do.
I'm
Okay.
a dual citizen. I live in America, Christina.
Oh, okay. Well, soap operas. Soap operas are run knowing that somebody's going to come in and start watching the series who's never seen it before. So on soap operas, they talk in a certain way. One character doesn't say to the other character, "How was your trip?" What they say is, "How was your trip to London last weekend with your cousin George?" And it puts everything in context. So I try to, in communication, think like soap operas and sort of restate things. So instead of, "Jonathan, how was your trip?" Right? If somebody's listening to us, they don't know what we're talking about. But instead, it's, "Jonathan, how was your trip to London with your cousin George who just got divorced?"
Excellent. Yeah.
And so if I try to think like soap operas, I do a better job of communicating.
That's fantastic insight. Thanks for that. So, Christina, we had during the podcast part of the show, we had a bit. It was slightly depressing, wasn't it? About poor old WordPress and Gutenberg and that. And I feel so guilty because it's like kicking an injured dog, really. But let's try and be a bit hopeful. What do you think the word, Automatic and the Gutenberg team, and I feel it's totally retrievable. I don't think it, something needs to be done, but the good news is it's totally achievable. What would you advise them with your enormous experience of learners dealing with non-WordPress professionals utilize? What do they need to turn the ship around a little bit, Christina?
Automatic. I think they need, well, first of all, they've created a platform for companies like Elegant Themes and Divi and Elementor to just take off, and other theme developers and other plugin developers like Gravity Forms. I mean, they've created an environment for business owners like us to have a business. And I hope that they understand and appreciate and recognize all these satellite businesses like me. I discovered, hey, I've got a niche here to teach business owners this techie stuff who don't want to become techies, right? So that's my niche. And both of you guys have this niche. So they need to recognize that they need to not get rid of the classic editor and not get rid of the classic widget plugins. They keep threatening it's only going to be around for a few more years, and then they keep stretching it. I think they need to stop that and recognize that there's different people who are using the tool in a different way, and they need to not just focus on the developer market because it's a bigger market out there.
That's a very surprising answer in a way, because you strike me as a very thoughtful individual. You must know in your heart that they're not going to do that, though, Christina, aren't you? They're committed
I'm hoping
to.
they're listening to this right now and that they're taking this to heart.
There was a Twitter Spaces thing which I missed, and it was one of the biggest ones as well. It's like 100 or 150 people in it. I just couldn't listen to it. I just didn't have the bandwidth in my life to listen to it. But they were talking about a WordPress Lite. And I think that's what you're talking about, Christina.
Yeah.
It's almost saying there's a load of technical debt in WordPress at the moment, right? And there's bugs, there's thousands of bugs in there, and they're fixing them continually. And we've just had WordPress updated to 6. And I think for any software to progress, people didn't like Vista in Windows. They didn't like, I can't remember what the version was in Mac, but when a particular Leopard, I think, when Leopard came out in Macs, the community, the Mac community, just went, "What have you done? This is ridiculous. It's like CPU hungry and all this kind of stuff." And I think what we have to do as the human beings in this world is embrace the fact that change is inevitable, and you will have to learn the Gutenberg way, because that's what Matt Mullenweg's dream is all about. And I think the classic widgets will go, the classic builder will go, and we are going to have to reevaluate how we use WordPress within the blocks editor. It's that simple. It's inevitable, so we have to just embrace it.
But what's wrong with staying in the like pick Divi, for example? What's wrong with just staying in the Divi world?
Nothing
I mean,
at all.
my attitude has been,
well, it's the business, isn't it? You are right, Christina, but the thing is that Automatic has taken over $1 billion of investment over a number of investment rounds. And these investors need to see a return. And the only way they can see a return is to build WordPress.com into a direct competitor to Wix and Squarespace. And this is the contradiction, because its real growth came from people like you, me, and Andrew. So there's a bit of a duality and a contradiction. And when we all have contradictions in ourselves, but we normally can keep it together. But when these contradictions that's in all of us become too contradictory, we have a mental breakdown, or we go totally bonkers. And that's what's happening to the WordPress community, because there's contradictory forces at work, and it can be kept under control, but it could also go really totally out of control. We will have to see. I just want one last fun question, but it's a question I've been dying to ask you, Christina. You know, being that you've worked on the real Judge Dredd film, why was the Hollywood competitors such shit compared to the fantastic Judge Dredd that you worked on?
I don't know if I can answer that.
You must have something, because the one you worked on he's such a badass Judge Dredd.
Well, he's proper Judge Dredd. I mean,
he's a real badass.
You're the first huge Judge Dredd fan I've met. Most people.
And I grew up with I'm old enough to have grown up with the Judge Dredd 2000 AD. I grew up with 2000 AD, the comic. I've got all of them somewhere. But the point is, when I saw the Carl Urban version of Judge Dredd, I sat there at the time with my girlfriend at that time. I said, "They've done it. They've actually done it. This is him.
This is Judge Dredd, isn't it? You know, he was superb in it.
Judge Dredd, ruthless, cold-hearted. You know, judgmental.
It's almost as bad as you, Andrew. But no, but underneath it, you can tell, like from the comic, and obviously it's based on Plato, the Republic. He has this burning commitment to justice, hasn't he? That even though he's a total badass, but you sense that he's kind of made his decision. You know, even if I die, I'm fighting to the end, and I've accepted what might be the end, and I'm not backing off. And he's just relentless in that film, isn't he? Dealing with the challenges, and that's what it's a hero's journey, isn't it? It's pure. It's pure kind of Greek mythology, isn't it? Because it's pure. It's the hero's journey, and he's so mean, badass in it, isn't he?
Brilliant.
Well, okay, Christina doesn't know, because I'm obviously, but I love the film and I love the concept. Christina, you have to come back on the show.
I would love to.
It's been a fantastic interview. It's the type of interviews. One of the reasons why I continue with the interview show, because I get so much joy from it. We'll see you next week. And that should be interesting, because I'll be in Portugal. Hopefully Andrew will be able to still do it with me. Plus, we've got the Friday show, and we're trying to organise something special for the Friday show in Portugal. We'll see how we go, folks. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.